Is this one of my favorite Benjamin Moore colors ever? Highly possible. The color code is AF-290. The company is Benjamin Moore, and the name is Caliente. This is color code, so it's time to crack that code and reveal the mysteries behind this beautifully rich, charismatic shade of red. So normally on color code, we analyze a paint color within the scope of it being your primary paint color choice. And then we give you a couple color pairing options that we offer as the supporting cast, if you will. This episode is going to be a little bit different just based on how dynamic this color is. You could just look at it and see that Caliente is taking no prisoners in the saturation department. When it was first released alongside the Benjamin Moore Affinity color collection, it stood out in a sea of already beautiful, vibrant color choices. So I wanted to address the red elephant in the room. This is not a color that I would suggest you paint your entire apartment with, or your house. It's not something I would call a main color that you can base an entire design off of, but it's easily my favorite red paint color by Benjamin Moore, and it can be utilized as more than just an accent color here and there. I'll get to some color pairings for Caliente right after you just hit that like button for me, please. Just the one down there. Did you do it? Not quite yet? Okay, good. So while I wait for that clicky click, I'll explain the pairings here. We have a light, a medium, and a dark, as well as an off-white. Something you can use alongside Caliente as a trim color, or for your ceiling, or anywhere else you would use a white paint. Now let's get to the first one. What better pairing for my favorite red than one of my favorite light neutrals? Classic Gray. So to me, Classic Gray is one of the quintessential grayish paint colors that has become one of my easier neutral recommendations for anyone that's looking for a color to easily fill a space with. It's just such a nice balance of gray, of course, but you also have that little bit of beigey, almost taupe, to prevent it from feeling yellowy or greeny. Now I do realize that I sounded a bit blasphemous because I am insinuating that green is a bad thing, but I do realize that there are several people, at least a handful out there, that aren't ready to embrace green as an undertone in their neutral paint colors specifically. So Classic Gray really fits that mold of the more brown or slightly red-leaning color schemes, which conveniently works really well with a red like Caliente. Now this trend continues with our mid-tone color choice, known as Sandlot Gray, and you can start to see even more of that red undertone coming through within the context of neutral warm gray. Just like the name suggests, there is a bit of a sandiness to this color, sort of a mixture of tan and rose gold almost. And while Classic Gray had just the slightest tint of that red-leaning brown, it actually looks more beige than anything when paired with Sandlot Gray. This is a neutral that isn't very subtle when it comes to its saturation. You're really getting a mid-tone, rosy brown that feels pretty safe next to something like Caliente, but a little more bold and saturated next to Classic Gray. So it sort of splits the difference there. When you have it on its own, it really does speak for itself as a pretty creative alternative to those more yellow-leaning grays out there. For the dark color pairing, I dipped back into the Affinity color collection to sort of round things out a bit, because one of the cool things about all of those AF colors by Benjamin Moore is they were formulated to work with one another. You can pick 2 or 3 random chips from the collection and they just all seem to work really well together. So I picked French Press specifically because it's a deeply saturated color that does have this neutral wash to it as a brown. Caliente is just so fiery and so full of energy, so I wanted something to work alongside it in a more supportive way. That's what French Press does. It sort of represents your grandfather's rich mahogany armoire that's standing in front of your super energetic red Caliente wall. It just gives you a lovely balance where you have bold red and stable, sturdy dark brown. With all these pairings, there's really no green in sight, so I resisted the urge to throw in some greenage, which took a lot out of me, honestly. But the only reason I didn't do that is because green undertones mixed with red, it can be a little complementary. They do sit on opposite ends of the color wheel, green and red, so it can be a little polarizing for certain people, so I took a more conservative approach to these colors. Now, of course, we gotta finish off with the off-white paint color to round these pairings out, and I actually didn't want to pick something that had pretty obvious undertones, and I definitely didn't want to go into cool territory, so I sort of met in the middle with Decorator's White. For a white paint color, it really is clean and a little bit stark, but it has that touch of gray which helps soften the overall look. And it also has enough of a difference in lightness between the lighter color we talked about, Classic Gray, earlier on. And funny enough, Classic Gray was actually one of our first Paint People videos ever on this channel. So you can check out a blast from the past right over here and see our review on it. I liked it then, and I still like it now.